Okay, welcome to Senate Education. It's Wednesday, February 16th. We are going to start a conversation today on S-248, which is an act relating to the governance of the State College and the University of Vermont. We're then going to move and have about an hour discussion with Dr. Levine and Secretary French on vaccinations. Today is Rights and Democracy Lobby Day in Vermont. They asked for some time, and we're then going to start to go back to some of the work we did yesterday on H572, which is an act related to retirement allowance for interim educators, and then wrap the day up with pupil waiting study language that Jim will bring back to us. But with that, Senator Hooker, before we jump into witnesses, I'm wondering if, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you to prepare, but I know you're great on your feet with this. This is your bill, your something you put in. I'm wondering if you might say a few words about, remind us why you decided to do it and a little bit more background before we officially jump in.
Sure, thanks. This is a bill dealing with public higher education and the structure of the boards. And it came to me and others in Rutland County especially with our work with Castleton and in talking about the mergers that are occurring now within the Vermont State College system. And it was brought to our attention that it would be a perfect time really to look at including members of staff and faculty on the boards of our state colleges and our university. This is something that would not cost us anything as a state, but may have ramifications that could go on to help solidify the strengths of our higher education system. So I put the bill in at the request of people who had been meeting and talking about the issues at the campuses in the state and realizing that people on the ground really have an idea of what the needs are and where they are willing to help in this way in help to guide the system to make sure that the needs of the students, first of all, of the faculty, the staff, and certainly the community are met. So with that, I will just hand it over to our witnesses who can talk to you about the need that we see.
And so you would really, this is a shared governance model at our Vermont State colleges. Okay.
Correct.
Terrific. So with that, thanks everybody for coming. Why don't we start with Caitlin? Is it Vitae?
Vitae's.
Vitae's. All right. Thanks for being with us. It looks like you're joining us. You're with the American Association of University Professors. Are you in DC?
Yes, I am.
Great. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm here to voice my strong support for Senate Bill 248, but first wanted to introduce myself. So I work as a government relations officer for the American Association of University Professors, or the AUP. And we've been around since 1915. We were founded by Vermont's own John Dewey. And the AUP has been an active and influential voice in higher education ever since then. So the AUP defines and develops fundamental professional values, advances the rights of faculty, and promotes higher education for the common good. So we like to think we speak for the academic profession as a whole, and more specifically for our members across hundreds of campus-based chapters, some of which are unions, like United Academics at UVM, and some of which are non-unionized professional associations. So I think first off, we support this bill because shared governance of academic programs is one of the AUP's core values, as is our belief that faculty should have a meaningful role in university affairs and governance. So regular, free, and direct communication between faculty and the university governing board is really critical for this to happen.
So may I interrupt and ask a quick question? So could that happen without having faculty vote on something. In other words, having trust faculty on committees, having faculty give feedback in other ways?
Mhm. So I think adding on faculty selected representatives to the governing board is a really great way, but it's certainly not the only one. And I think Linda is going to speak a little bit later on why this particular solution is needed in Vermont.
Okay. Okay.
So I think generally speaking, we know that when other trustees from various constituencies are added to a board, we know they're bringing valuable insights from their own professional and personal histories that can make for better informed decision making. So I think our colleges really would not be the same without the staff that manage facilities, the faculty teaching and doing research, and the students who create that vibrant campus culture. They should all be welcome at the table to share their insights and support the Board of Trustees and its really essential mission. And I think second, I wanted to talk about Vermont joining the national trend of including broader representation on boards. So already 8 statewide governing boards in places as different as California and Kentucky have at least 1 seat for faculty. And New Jersey and Alaska are considering similar legislation this session. So of course, beyond statewide forums, there's tons of colleges that have seats for faculty, staff, and students. So this legislation does not make Vermont a trendsetter by any means, but it does set a higher standard for what participation looks like in university-wide decision-making. And I guess my last point is just speaking as a UVM alum, it's just the right thing to do. So given the difficult choices that university leaders have had to make during the pandemic, one would think that having representatives of important campus constituencies at the table would help build university-wide buy-in for these big decisions. So on issues as contentious as merging institutions or raising tuition or eliminating academic programs, I think that every person on campus deserves to have their voice heard through their chosen representatives, and empowering students, faculty, and staff with an opportunity to work collaboratively with university leadership to solve these thorny problems. We should really embrace that, because it does say in the UVM mission statement that we ought to prepare students, and by extension, other members of the campus community to, quote, be accountable leaders with a dedication to the community, a grasp of complexity, effective problem solving and communication skills, and an enduring commitment to learning and ethical conduct. So I guess in short, this bill seems like a great opportunity for Vermont's public colleges to put, our values and the university-wide vision into practice. So I think that's all I have. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Vitez at this point? Ms. Vitez, are you able to stay on the line with us for a little bit as we make our way through in case we want to loop back to you? Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you. Looks like next we have Professor Cohn, who is who's Professor of Linguistics and trustee also at Cornell. Professor.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. And I'm
how's the weather in Ithaca?
Oh, well,
Nice and warm?
Probably similar to what you guys are contending with. So I just through my own experience, I'm happy to speak in strong support of 248. I'm a professor of linguistics at Cornell, where I've been on the faculty for 32 years now. And I'm one of 2 faculty elected members of the Cornell Board of Trustees. I've been an active member of our faculty senate and thought that at some point running for one of the faculty elected trustee positions would be a very interesting opportunity, this being a very special aspect of shared governance at Cornell. And I'm in my 2nd year of a 4-year term, having agreed to run for the position in February 2020. Little did I or any of us know what laid in store, so this has been a much more eventful time than I had imagined it would be serving on the board, but I think my role has been all the more important because of that. Cornell actually has a very large board with a total of 64 positions, and that includes 5 constituent elected trustees, 2 faculty, 1 staff member, and 2 students, 1 undergrad and 1 grad or professional student. And all of us,
Professor, quick question, everybody votes also?
yep, we're all
Okay,
voting
thanks
members.
for that. Okay, appreciate it.
And we're all elected through direct vote of our respective constituencies. Cornell has had constituency elected trustees since the 1970s. And on the whole, there's very strong consensus that this strengthens the effectiveness of the board to make informed decisions in representing Cornell as an institution. Once we're elected, we are first and foremost members of the board, just like other board members, whether appointed or elected. There are also alumni elected trustees on the board. We function as full voting members of the board with the fiduciary responsibility to represent the best interests of Cornell as an institution. We also hold ourselves to the highest level of confidentiality. Thus, while we can and do offer the perspective of the constituency we are elected by, we are not there as advocates for that constituency, nor do we report back in any direct way to our constituency, though we certainly can raise issues of concern or share ideas that are voiced by our constituencies. The most important role we play, I believe, is to have a voice at the table and to be ears in the room. How does a particular policy or decision affect our shared goals from the perspectives of students, staff, and faculty? We can also facilitate communication in a number of ways, giving voice to ideas or concerns that faculty might have, and also helping board members connect with faculty and learn more about what we do as faculty. As a faculty elected trustee, I serve as an ex officio member of the Faculty Senate, and through this role, keep in touch with the current issues of concern to the faculty, and can also share the board perspective with the Faculty Senate when appropriate. Much of the work of the board is done by committees, and there are certain standard assignments for the constituent elected trustees. I serve on the Committee on Academic Affairs, Student Life, University Relations, and the Trustee Community Communications Committee, and I'm currently chairing the Committee for Campus Constituency Elected Trustees. Through each of these committees, and as an attendee at the full board meetings, I've brought my own experiences as a longtime faculty member to bear, while also learning a lot about Cornell as an institution and how it functions in each of these spheres. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Really appreciate it. Any questions at this point for Professor Cohn? Senator Hooker, please.
Senator Campion, could I just ask Professor Cohn if you could submit your testimony? I don't see it on our webpage. But
Sure,
if you submit it, then we can reread it and
Sure,
have
yes.
it sink in. Thanks.
Should I just send it to Daphne? Is that
That'd
the,
be perfect.
okay, I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for being here.
I was going to say Professor Chittenden, but he's also a faculty member at University of Vermont. Senator Chittenden, Senator Professor.
I don't have a doctorate, so it's just a lecturer. But Dr. Cohn, thank you very much for being here. And I'm looking at the board members for Cornell, and I'm intrigued by the number that I'm seeing here. Could you tell me how many of these are what we have at the University of Vermont, self-perpetuating, so to speak, and that they elect from themselves? Is there a proportionality that you could summarize what percentage of these are necessarily tapped for their connections, being alumnus or otherwise in industry, and put that in context with how many are from the faculty and the staff that you mentioned?
Sure. So as I did say, we have a real exceptionally large board, and I myself cannot fully answer your question because I'm still trying to understand that. But we do have these 5 constituent elected positions. There are 8 alumni elected trustees, and then there are several set positions, including the governor of New York and some other appointed positions. About I would say 2/3 to 3/4 of those positions are what I would call sort of regular positions. Cornell is unusual in that we are both an endowed and state institution, and so we have sort of some complexity in that, but we're not part of the SUNY system. So we don't have, we follow our own bylaws. And Cornell, this is just in my humble assessment, we have a really large percentage of alums on our board. And I find that to be in comparison to other institutions. The alums, of course, are tapped for the kinds of expertise they can bring to the board, but a very high percentage are alums. And the constituent elected trustees normally just serve one 4-year, well, a 4-year term for the staff and faculty, 2-year terms for the students, and that does not usually get repeated, whereas other positions can be reappointed by the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Professor Cohn at this point? Thank you, Professor. Sorry, Senator Lyons.
You know, very quickly, some of the concerns that we heard and pushback for having faculty and staff on the board is around conflict of interest. And so what kind of guidelines do you have in place, and how do you deal with some of the concerns that you hear from folks who may not support having faculty and staff on the board?
So we, as a faculty member, I of course sign a conflict of interest, form every year, and as a board member, I do as well. At Cornell, at least, the tendency, the bigger concern tends to be what's perceived to be financial conflict of interest more than other spheres. And in my experience to date on the board, no one has ever raised the concern about sort of conflict of interest in other ways, that somehow we'd be advocating for, I don't know, faculty raises or something. That just has never even come up as an issue. I do know that the first and foremost thing that we, all of the new trustees, we have an orientation. We also have a number of documents we sign, and the first and foremost thing that is explained to us and is repeated is this idea that our fiduciary responsibility is to the best interest of Cornell as an institution. We are all asked to set aside whatever other caps we might wear when we come to the table in that regard. And so that applies equally well to any of our other board members who also have their other day jobs and how they do or don't bring those to bear. I think the thing that gets raised here more often is just the issue of confidentiality. And I have heard tell that there was one student trustee many years ago who was not sufficiently respectful of confidentiality. And if anything, in the stories I hear, there's often more concerns with some of the other board members sharing information before it's been officially pushed out by the central administration than ever an issue with the constituent elected trustees.
Thank you again, Professor. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Great. Professor Cohn, I don't know if you can stay with us or if you...
Sure, for a bit.
Yeah,
Please.
okay, terrific. Thanks very much for that. Eleanor Miller, President of United Academics. Thanks for being with us. And I am looking for, yeah, there's Eleanor. Ms. Miller, you are muted. There you are. Great.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Miller. I'm professor of sociology and president of United Academics. United Academics represents 671 full-time faculty and about 100 part-time faculty at UVM. I came to UVM in 2005 to be Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. I served in that role until 2011 when I returned to the faculty. I love my work at UVM. Like my faculty colleagues, I'm passionate about educating Vermont's college students and thereby contributing to the health and welfare of this great state. I'm here today to ask you to please support Senate Bill 248. The state of Vermont sends millions of dollars to UVM every year because our state values public higher education. UVM is our state chartered public university. UVM staff and faculty have firsthand knowledge of the challenges that our students confront in securing a higher education in the state. We also know the challenges that faculty and staff confront in assuring a positive and successful educational environment. And we know these things better than anyone else because we live them. The current structure of UVM leadership, we feel, is failing us all. The Board of Trustees has shut out the voices of faculty, staff, and many students, and there is no opportunity for meaningful participation. Valuable, thoughtful input from these core members of our institution is ignored. UVM should be a thriving institution with world-class teaching, research, and education, and high employee and student satisfaction and retention. Changing governance, we feel, is urgently needed to protect the quality of our institution. My colleagues in the Faculty Women's Caucus compiled a report based on research they conducted. Their data indicate that UVM women faculty, and in particular faculty of color, do not feel supported at UVM. In fact, more than 72% of respondents rated UVM as fair or poor in equitable treatment of faculty, women and BIPOC faculty, in terms of, quote, compensation, workload, work assignment, working conditions, service expectations, recognition, evaluations, and promotion, end quote. In addition, 81% of respondents rated recent administrative decisions as having a large and negative impact on campus climate and working conditions. We know that an intimate knowledge of the conditions that produce these responses could create a radically different environment for educators and students. This report was shared with the members of the board with not a single response. We can do better. The sudden closure of the campus child care center by the administration left hundreds of faculty and community members scrambling to find childcare for their young children. It was devastating for families and also meant that UVM students studying early education no longer had an important professional development opportunity of working at the center. Distinguished research universities throughout the country have robust support for young families, including large daycare centers. Such centers are used to recruit and support first-rate faculty, especially women. They have become an expectation of employment that UVM does not meet. We can do better. Finally, a stated goal of the UVM administration is attainment of Research 1 status, a distinction awarded by the Carnegie Foundation to the top doctoral granting research universities in the country. UVM has closed departments and programs, left several core departments in the College of Arts and Sciences at the brink of non-viability, and merged others, destroying what was formerly a community of scholars, all with no meaningful input from the faculty involved or governance structures like the Faculty Senate. Carnegie recently released new rankings. UVM was not among them. Faculty involvement in this initiative across disciplines is critical to the success of this endeavor, but faculty have no avenue for shaping this goal. UVM's tightly controlled top-down strategy is not working. We can do better. The board's responsibility to facilitate shared governance has broken down under the weight of an insular relationship between it and executive administrators. Faculty Senate representatives have no voting rights and meaningful avenues for input from on-the-ground stakeholders. Faculty and staff are central to carrying out UVM's mission, yet we feel we are ignored and given no opportunity to help shape the future of an institution we love. We can and should do better.
Thank you, Professor Miller. Quick, two questions, I guess, that I have before opening up. I'm curious if you would say a little bit about how the Faculty Senate works as it relates to the administration at UVM. And then there are faculty on the subcommittees of the board. Is that accurate?
There are representatives, yes.
There are representatives. Okay, terrific. Would you mind just saying a few words about how the Faculty Senate works in relation to the administration? For example, was your comment about UVM faculty of color don't feel supported really concerns me. How would that sort of go through the process? Do you bring it to the Faculty Senate first? Do you bring it right to the administration? It sounds like you've brought it to the trustees, but, and I'm not saying that I'm disappointed in the trustees that haven't responded to you, but it seems like there would be other folks that you want to bring it to that could do something about it even faster than the trustees. So I'm just wondering a little bit about that process.
Certainly the Faculty Senate was well aware of this research. It was also brought to the provost.
Okay. And so how does the Faculty Senate, what's the involvement with the Faculty Senate around, policies on campus? It sounds like it doesn't sound like there's any voice at all for UVM faculty. And yet I know that there's a Faculty Senate, and I'm just trying to get educated a little bit around how that group interacts with the administration.
Professor Chittenden would certainly know better than I. But the president of the Faculty Senate does get an opportunity to interact with the board.
Okay.
The president of the Faculty Senate gets an opportunity to interact with the administration of UVM. But the faculty themselves don't get very much opportunity to interact with the board. So it is a kind of curated relationship and a distant one.
So it's the president of the Faculty Senate, and I'll let Senator Chittenden jump in here, who's elected by the faculty, interacts with the board. That's accurate? Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So thank you. For those watching might not know this, but I served as the Faculty Senate president until 2020, and I was elected twice by the faculty. I agree with many of the concerns you've raised, Dr. Miller, about some of the recent decisions, and I'd love to put some of the more recent concerns about the Child Care Center, the across-the-board 5% cut that was then reversed, as well as the proposed mergers and how those conversations came out in a larger timescale context to understand if this was just a one-time set of concerns that is correcting itself gradually, or if this has been a systemic issue with governance at the university. I'm not yet of one mind or the other as to whether or not these are just recurring issues with the current structure. But I'll say this, as the president of the Faculty Senate, I attended all of the executive committee meetings of the Board of Trustees, and I also attended all of the board meetings. I was asked to speak at many of them, but I will also say that when I came on with a new administration, and there was many times where that administration was making changes as to how the previous administrations had done it. So that brings me back to my earlier point, as I'm trying to understand how much of this is contextual to recent issues that are in a way resolving themselves, as opposed to systemic going back 20 or 30 years with the structure. I have spoken with Thomas Borchert, the current Faculty Senate president of the University of Vermont, and I would love to have him weigh in on this. I think that it's important to recognize that the Faculty Senate at UVM does have a role. I would agree that it could be stronger. For example, at the executive council meetings, I never went into the executive session as the Senate president. I think rethinking that, making sure that the Faculty Senate president has a full perspective of the board and is treated as a complete equal would be a worthwhile conversation to have. So Eleanor, Dr. Miller, at some point, I'd love to get some context for how much we are worried about recent changes in the current administration and whether or not the governance systems that are put in place and what the Faculty Senate has been doing is addressing those versus how much of this is just systemic issues. All that being said, I've talked too much. I am not against what this bill is proposing. I think it makes sense, and I love the Cornell model of having some voice and representation. I just don't want to neglect or not recognize what role the Faculty Senate has played, continues to play, and I think should continue to be a part of in these governance conversations. Did I miss anything, Chair Campion?
No, that's very helpful. And I just want to go back to Professor Cohn for a moment so we can have a conversation. Professor Cohn, was it the Cornell University that said, okay, we want a faculty member, or was it the legislature in Albany that debated this and said, okay, Cornell, we're going to now we're going to have one faculty member, one staff member, et cetera. Do you know that history?
It's completely internal to Cornell.
Okay. Okay.
Because we really, as a board, we represent and function more as a private university. We do have mandated an open portion of our session with respect to open meeting laws and so on, but the structure of the board and changes to the bylaws are completely at the behest of the of the board.
Right. The reason I ask, because I do know I have several cousins that went there, but as SUNY students. So I know that there's a state university.
It's really complicated.
Complicated. So I didn't know if Albany was
we are the
involved in
land
this
grant.
in any- right. You are a land grant. Yes.
Institution for New York State. And we, the 4 colleges that are land grant they're sort of under the umbrella of SUNY, though they're not called
Right.
SUNY, but our board functions really as a largely as a private board, though, as I did say, the governor and a few other states representatives have a structural position. But one of the other 64 positions is the oldest living descendant of our co-founder, Ezra Cornell. So it's a very funny set of different kinds of requirements.
Yeah.
And I do
Sounds like a nightmare, but that's okay. Go ahead.
it works. It seems
Yep,
to work.
it worked. Yep. Okay.
I do know that student representation grew out of the protests in 1969 at Cornell.
Okay.
And then the faculty, there was a structure that predated our faculty senate, and they were the ones that requested faculty representation, but I don't know sort of the further details.
But that's very helpful. And that's why Professor Miller and Senator Chinden, has the Faculty Senate asked for a spot on the trustees and been rejected? Senator Chinden.
So that's what when I spoke with you, Heather Roemer, who's on the call here as well, and other conversations with Senator Hooker, I've stated that I'll get fully behind this if the University of Vermont Faculty Senate considers the bill and then takes a position on its status. And so I don't know where that is working through the Faculty Senate. I last spoke to Thomas Borcher, I think a month and a half ago, and he was non-committal on whether or not there would be attention for it. But I would see that as a very valuable next step, is have both the union and the Faculty Senate of the University of Vermont with clear voice state that this is something that they support, because I don't think we can derail or sideline the Faculty Senate. I support the Faculty Senate at the University, as I do the union. I'm a proud UA member, but I think we need to get the Faculty Senate to also be part of this conversation and to weigh in on it.
Yeah, when things come to the I get it. People look to the legislature for, a number of different things, but Professor Miller, help me out here. It just seems to me that at this point, it seems as though that hasn't been exhausted. The proposal has, at least in recent years, has not gone to the board. I also know that we know that there are elected members from the legislature who serve on the Board of Trustees. I've not heard from them, not that I need to necessarily on this issue at this point, but it seems to me that we would first try some of the internal approaches, and feel free to disagree with me, Professor.
I think that when Julie Roberts was president, that she asked for faculty representation and was told that that was not going to be considered. I
When
can,
when was she president?
I think right before Senator Chittenden.
Okay. And that,
Um,
okay.
I do know that the current Senate president intends to bring this before the Senate soon. And so the Senate will speak to it. I can also speak to Senator Chittenden's question about whether this is longstanding. I came, as I said, in 2005, and I have the perspective of someone who for 5.5 years was the Dean of Arts and Sciences. And I would say that this is a longstanding issue.
Thank you. Professor Cohn.
Could I just share, I mean, from the Cornell perspective, we have, so our equivalent of the president of the Senate would be our faculty elected dean of faculty. And that person presides over the faculty senate and also attends the central administration, the dean's meetings and so on. So that person has the ear of the provost and the president. And I feel that the role of that person having the ear of the dean and the president and potentially the board, and that person does attend board meetings as a non-voting member. And the role of the constituent elected trustees are different but complementary. So I wouldn't see it as an either or kind of thing. So the things that percolate up and how they percolate are very different with those two relationships. And having both of those be very functioning, clear relationships is very important in my experience to good communication between the faculty, the central administration, and the board.
Thank you. Linda Olson. Thanks for being with us. You're the Vice President of Higher Education for AFT. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not only Vice President of Education for AFT, I'm also a member of the Castleton University faculty. I've been there for 27 years, and I, like Ellie, am a sociology professor. So you're overwhelmed with sociologists here on this call. Aren't you lucky? So I actually, as the rep for AFT, I just wanted to say that we represent over 33,000 faculty and staff at the VSC and UVM, as well as thousands of nurses who are working on the front lines during this pandemic. So we are well represented in the state. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of Senate Bill 248, and I'm asking that you vote this out of committee. So I'm speaking just for the Vermont State Colleges now, but in terms of recent and recurring events at the VSCS, indicate that the existing governance model will be greatly enhanced with direct and consequential communication between the trustees and members of the faculty and staff. The fundamental premise for a shared governance model to succeed in higher education requires students, staff, faculty, administrative team, and trustees to participate in the decision-making process of an institution. In a shared governance model, these constituents enjoy a sense of responsibility for and ownership of their institution. According to the Association of Governing Bodies of Universities and Colleges, shared governance strengthens leadership and decision-making, but to be effective and sustained, there needs to be an atmosphere of mutual trust, collaboration, communication, transparency, inclusiveness, honesty, and integrity. Such an atmosphere does not currently exist in the VSC, but for the well-being of our institutions, we need to foster one, and a system of shared governance would help in that process. So I have some benefits of shared governance, and then I can add to this and share the quirks of the VSC as compared to UVM, because our governance model is a little, what we have in terms of faculty governance is a little different. But in terms of the benefits, the Board of Trustees are not on campus in the day-to-day perspective of campus life. So adding staff, faculty, and students would add this perspective. Very few trustees on the VSC board anyway have higher education experience. So this would add to the higher education experience on the board. Student-facing people on the board will inform decisions and reduce changes that have unforeseen consequences. And I think that's really important because some decisions have been made that have affected our students in negative ways. The trend of the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Trustees has been to hire outside experts rather than campus experts. And I would like to see that change because outside experts are expensive. Just to give you some examples, NCHEMS, the National Corporation for Higher Education Management, charged approximately $250,000 to compile their report on the future of the Vermont State College system. RPK was hired to make recommendations about academic consolidation that cost $195,000. And this is just two of many. I understand the benefits of external experts. I've done that role in my own discipline at different colleges. So I know it's important. I know it's valuable, but we also need to tap into campus experts who could add some insight that's not being listened to with just using outside experts. And this would happen if there was the presence of faculty and staff. There is student representation on the board right now. We're just asking to expand that. So there should be student representation. There is student representation. There's one student on the board right now. When the American Association of University Professors called for greater communication between faculty and governing bodies in universities, they stated that currently communication between faculty and board members, when it occurs at all, tends to be ritualized, infrequent, and limited to specific agenda items. To not hear from all people makes the board more ceremonial than effective. It also means the board is making decisions without a full understanding of what's happening on the campuses, sometimes with disastrous results. Shared governance becomes a platitude rather than a reality. An example of this is that public comment is allowed at these board meetings, but only at the end after all decisions are made. This is what I mean by saying shared governance right now is ceremonial rather than effective. Shared governance would enable the board to create institutions that can do what we have been charged by the legislature to do, which is work for the good of Vermont. That's our goal. That's our mission. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I would like to just add something in light of the conversation that just occurred. In the Vermont State College system, we have a group called the Labor Task Force, which has labor representatives from all of the labor unions at the campuses. And we came up with a board, we came up with a proposal for the future of the VSC. Some of you might have watched our presentation way back. I think we presented it in November of 2020. And at that time, we presented it to the faculty assemblies or faculty senates. They're called different things on different campuses. We presented at each campus, and all of the faculty senates, there are 4 of them total, voted to endorse our proposal over all of the other proposals. And our proposal did have shared governance as one of its central goals. So we do have the support of the faculty assemblies. We got that about a year and a half ago, and they continue to support us right now and consult with the Labor Task Force in determining the future of the institution. And I think because we're going through this transformation process, it's even more important that we have faculty, staff, and student representation on these boards, because we are making decisions that will greatly change the structure of the institutions themselves. And we're going to be one college and one community college going forward. So it's even more critical that we have these voices at the table who have this hands-on experience, who have the student-facing experience, so that we make decisions so that we can best serve our mission, which is service to the state of Vermont. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hooker.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for being here. I do have a question. We've heard, we've had presentations from the Chancellor's office about the merger and stuff, and like UVM having kind of subcommittees that have faculty representation on them. Does the State College have such committees? And I mean, we were told that in this process of this transformation process that faculty has been included. I think the number was like 87 faculty members have been included. Can you just kind of comment on that and what the experience has been?
Yeah, there have been faculty included in things like academic consolidation. I'm not on one of those committees, but they have actually tried to figure out ways that we can consolidate academics across the campuses. So there have been those conversations, but oftentimes they are, once again, ceremonial rather than authentic or effective. In other words, there seems to be an agenda coming from the chancellor's office that we are not privy to, but we're expected to get on board. So there have been some concerns about that expressed by faculty members as well. Although faculty have been involved in some levels on this transformation process. So there has been some of that.
Thank you.
Senator Lyons, please.
Thank you. This has been extremely helpful. I thank you all for your testimony. This excellent. As someone who's been through restructuring and reorganization as a faculty member, and then receiving the initial message from the top down, from the board, and feeling somewhat helpless, but being allowed to rearrange deck chairs a little bit. Tell me this: if faculty were on the board, and then for making curricular and making the changes that I think some institutions have gone through recently, do you think that it would make a difference in two ways? One, just in perception and culture, and then B, in actual implementation and functional structural changes?
Yeah, I think it would make a difference in both. I do. I think if there wasn't an authentic role for faculty in this transformation process, first of all, I think we wouldn't lose sight of our overall goal to the state of Vermont. Second of all, I think that there'd be more buy-in from faculty, and faculty are, they're pretty creative people. They figure out ways to compromise with each other, to work with each other. There's several examples of that I could bring up that have happened in this transformation process and before. But when we're allowed to communicate with our colleagues without a top-down agenda, we do really good work. We actually do really good work. We're pretty clever. And we do see our goal as to really creating people who could go out in Vermont and work for the best interest of Vermont. The students who do go to school in Vermont and one of the public colleges are much more likely to stay in Vermont after graduation. I was telling a colleague that I did the budget hearing a few years ago, and I was amazed that half of the people testifying were my former students who are testifying for really good agencies and doing really good work in Rutland County. And that's the reality. And I think that we can expand that if, one, we're funded adequately, which I always have to bring that up whenever I'm talking to senators. But two, that faculty and staff play a role in figuring out how we can actually create institutions that work in the best interest of our students and our communities and our state.
Thank you. Senator Lyons, any other follow-ups or any other comments anyone has?
No, thank you. That was very helpful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howard, great to have you with us.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here, and I want to just apologize in advance. I have not been successful in getting my dogs to cooperate with me this afternoon, so you may hear them fighting in the background, and I will try to keep that to a minimum. But they don't listen to me.
No problem.
So,
this is a dog-friendly committee.
Good. Well, let me just start and introduce myself. I'm Steve Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association, and we represent the staff federation on the campuses of the Vermont State colleges, about 200 of our 200 members. And we aren't the academic portion of the university, but we are the folks who support the professors and who keep the campuses running and keep the campuses clean and operating. And of course, I don't think I have to remind any of you that during this last couple of years, that has been absolutely essential service that our members have provided. It's really a difficult job. I want to start by sharing some advice that we often hear from somebody, and I will say this with all due respect to Senator Chittenden, from somebody who, from a former governor of Vermont, who in my book is still by all means the best governor we've ever had in the history of the state, Governor Cunin, when she said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that really has been the experience of our members, who are literally having the books balanced on their backs. Cuts and vacancies remain unfilled. All of that amounts to increased workload for fewer people, and it's really keeping our state colleges from reaching their full potential. And I want to just say that speaking of having a seat at the table, the fact that we're even having this discussion is really, if you think about it, as a result of a former Castleton alum, a union steward and chief negotiator for her union, having a seat in the state Senate. So your lead sponsor of this bill is there, has a seat at the table, and has been able to bring this bill forward, which really I think you can see the impact of might not otherwise have gotten the kind of attention it's getting today. And so having a seat at the table is really essential in moving for change, and the kind of change that our members are hopeful for on the state college campuses. Vermont state colleges are economic engines. They create jobs, they support local businesses, they attract new residents to our state, and they lift Vermonters up for whom a college education may not ever have been in the cards. We have lost our way somewhat along the way, and we were for a while, I think, and potentially still are, too top down and too focused on outside experts, while not taking advantage of the knowledge and the experience and the skills of the people who we have right on our campuses. The faculty and the staff, they are the experts, and it's time for them to be consulted, to be included, and to be given power. They are the answer that we are looking for. They know where to go and what the course should be. And so we want to make sure that they are given an opportunity to bring their expertise to bear. This bill really, I think, has some other benefits, which is to really shake up the current system of governance, which some might describe as sort of stale. It injects new life, new energy, potentially more diversity, fresh perspectives, and hope by changing the decision makers and instilling diversity and diverse perspectives and experiences, really creating an opportunity for a new set of leaders to chart the course for the Vermont State College system, which is so critical to our economy and so critical to our state in general. These changes, including union members, builds trust, it builds consensus, it creates unity, and that is really a solid foundation upon which the state college system could build. We know in the State House that the process really matters. We say that all the time. The process really matters. So being included in the process makes you feel like you matter. And that's really, I think, important. So our members do matter. They are important. They're not invisible, and they are ready and focused on bringing their expertise to bear on creating a vibrant and exciting future for the state college system. And the VSEA and the Staff Federation urge you to pass this legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Questions or comments for Mr. Howard at this point? Okay. Steve, are you able to stay with us also while we, okay, great. Heather, I'm sorry, I've known you for so long and I just don't want to mispronounce your last name. Is it Reamer or Reimer?
It is Reamer.
Okay, and I apologize. Glad you're with us, and the floor is yours.
Just a second, we need to turn off the.
Yeah, we're getting a little
Okay.
There you go. Great.
All right. So I'm Heather Roemer. I'm the director of AFT Vermont. Statewide, we represent over 6,000 higher ed and healthcare folks, professionals. And I hope Amy Brahmo gets a chance to talk to. This bill does include staff representation as well. And staff have, at the Vermont State Colleges, there is no staff council. And there is a staff council at UVM, but not that many people participate in it. I don't want to go into folks' criticisms of that, but there is some testimony that you can take a look at. You know, I think in many countries, it's really invited. You know, the German Works Councils is invited to have workers on the boards. They consider it, you know, it strengthens those institutions. Unfortunately, Megan Diffenderfer couldn't come today, but her testimony was submitted in writing. She's a friend of mine. She is a union member and works at and is on the board of City Market Co-op in Burlington. So they have a system there where she's able to participate, be a full member of the board of directors for City Market, and also be a member of the union. And they work that out. You know, she doesn't vote as on the contract as a board member, but she can vote on the contract as a union member. And anyway, I encourage you to read. I'm sure you have read her testimony, but I just wanted to highlight that fact that right here in Vermont, we do have folks who are already in this situation. The other thing I would just say is it's just not new. I'd like to highlight the fact that over 26% of public universities in 13 states already have this kind of representation, so it's not groundbreaking. Finally, I would just like to say, you know, this bill has tripartisan support and does not cost any additional money. So we obviously our union fully supports this bill and hopes that you can vote it out of committee.
Thanks, Ms. Roemer. Really appreciate it. And actually, I apologize also to Ms. Brahmo. I skipped over you, completely unintentional. But before we shift to Ms. Brahmo, I don't know if this is something you can answer, Ms. Roemer, or someone else. Back to the question we had about the University of Vermont. I understand people are coming to the legislature, but has this been proposed? And I may have missed it because I did have to step out for a moment. Has it been proposed to the chancellor, to the board, to the legislative trustees as something that people would want? That people want, and has a no been sort of come down, Ms. Roemer?
My understanding is that the structure of the boards of trustees. Oh, can you hear me? My understanding is that the structure of the boards of trustees, both at UVM and Vermont State Colleges, is in statute. So so I suppose they could voluntarily appoint someone to these, but there already is a statute lining out exactly who is on the board. That's why we've come to the legislature to add these positions to the board. It's also my understanding that in the states where there is representation, it's in statute, and we can get you more information on that.
It's really helpful. Thanks very much. Questions for Ms. Roemer? Comments? Ms. Brahmo, thank you for joining us.
Hi, hopefully, okay, good, it does work.
Perfect.
Hi, thank you for allowing me the time to testify in the Senate Bill 248. My name is Amy Brahmo. I've worked at Castleton University for over 10 years as a victims advocate. While my main role is advocating for our students, I also advocate for our staff. For the past 6 years, I've served as the chair of our staff's professional union. The staff's unit is the Vermont State Colleges United Professionals, or VSCUP, and represents more than 200 staff on 5 campuses. I've enjoyed getting to know these employees as individuals and to learn their unique set of needs to work in their role. This is important in my ability to represent them in our larger capacity. We also engage employees in surveys to obtain information on individual wants, needs, and issues. Our employees know they have a voice in our governance and representation. And while the Senate Bill 248 is not specifically a union issue, right now the the structure or avenue to feel represented. I urge you to do the same. You have the ability to legislate that there are participants from staff and faculty on the Vermont State College's Board of Trustees. This step ensures representation of the people, employees who work day to day directly with our students. This is why the VSCUP supports the Senate Bill 248. I was part of the spring 2018 cuts that happened at Castleton University. Those cuts were made in a large part due to poor budget oversight and the repeated rubber stamping of expenditures by our Board of Trustees. Instead, some past presidents selling the board sunshine and roses, the staff and faculty would provide more accurate depiction of what is needed when the board attempts to weed through all the details. Granting staff a seat at the table gives clarity and perspective in the lines of checks and balances. It also unifies employees and the board to work together for our students, where our current system is hierarchical and divides. When we are right there working together, we are hard to discount and dismiss. Please allow those who work with students to participate. Add staff and faculty to the governing body of our Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. Questions or comments for Ms. Brahmo? Okay. Any questions or comments for any of our witnesses, committee? Okay. I just want to thank you all for coming in. These are, I'd say, early and also late days. I don't want to give any, we have 2 weeks roughly before crossover. This would take a tremendous amount of work. I do not honestly believe at this point, but this is something that I only have one vote in this committee, that we have the bandwidth to do, to be honest, between getting the bills out that we have, as well as the appropriation requests and the number of things that are on our plate related to COVID and social emotional health of kids. And I'm not saying this isn't something that we can't continue to do after crossover, but between now and crossover, I will pull the committee and see if we can do some additional work on it. But I just want to be realistic that when I say 2.5 weeks, I'm really talking 10 days with a number of different things happening in this committee. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you all for coming in. Committee, let's just have a discussion before we take a break. Thoughts on this? You just heard me say, I just want to live in the world of reality, given our schedule and some of the priorities before us as it relates to schools and kids and other things. Again, that being said, I'm just one vote. Senator Hooker.
These are schools and kids.
I understand. Yep.
I would hope that we could.
I'm thinking though specifically related to COVID, schools and kids and relief. Again, I'm not saying, I just kind of come into this with really 8 days after this week to hear from the presidents of the colleges, the other side of it. It's a big lift. With a number of other things we have coming out. Again, I'm one person on this committee. The other thing that I'll be honest concerns me is I would like people to at least have come in and said something along the lines of, we've exhausted everything at our university and state colleges. We've done this, we've done that. And and I don't mean to be dismissive. I just want to, and I apologize if I'm coming across as I think I am. I just want to be realistic. Senator Chinden, you had your hand up.
I'd say two things. One, I think the VSC conversation is very relevant because they're merging. They're doing some things with those organizations. So that part of the bill, I think, is definitely worth more time and attention. UVM, I'm not saying it doesn't lack merit what they're proposing, but to your point, Chair Campion, I'd really like to see the Faculty Senate and the existing governance body at the university come in, weigh in on these changes, and then come with UA and possibly with the board to say, we think this makes sense. And as I applaud all those that have done some work on this so far, but I think more could be done to lay the groundwork for an effective permanent change that could really improve governance on the long-term horizon.
Okay, Senator Perslick. Get your hand up.
Oh, that was earlier. I'm supportive. I don't know. I haven't thought about the calendar, how we would do it for crossover, things like that, but I'm supportive of the bill. And I like Senator Chittenden's suggestion. Now we might want to emphasize the state colleges first, if that's something that we can limit on. I mean, unfortunately, it's the end of a biennium, so we can't kind of work on it later and then pick it up. I mean, whoever's here next year can pick it up anew. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. Senator Lyons.
So I was going to say that whatever we do, we should condition it because I think your point is well taken on the faculty demonstrating support for doing this. I mean, otherwise it's top down yet again. We don't want to be in that position. But look at the state colleges are in such transition right now. I mean, it's just amazing what's going on. So many different decisions are being made. And I do agree that the faculty carry a significant amount of expertise that would affect change and help the change. So but now I'm also a chair of a committee, and I am feeling undue pressure right now to do half of what we would like to do. So I don't think, I can't imagine that we do have the time to do everything necessary, but is there something that we could call out? Maybe it is the section that you were talking about earlier, VSEA section, or maybe there's some preparatory things that we could do that keeps this on the front burner. So it isn't a bill just left behind. So it could be, so somehow the faculty, bringing a faculty vote in that would suggest something moving forward. So
I think the piece for me is, I think shared governance, it is a big conversation.
It's a huge conversation, and there are 15 different sides to the story.
And it's, trustees have the fiduciary responsibilities for the institutions. I understand people are concerned about, when budgets, what are you going to do when budgets get tight? Books do have to be balanced. That's just a reality of life. Senator Hooker.
I was just going to say that, they would only be two of the people on the committee, on the board. It's not as if they're going to be there making the complete decision. And with regard to whether or not the faculty's been involved in this, certainly with the Vermont State Colleges, they have, because this whole bill came as a result of the work of the Labor Task Force. So I think that, they have done that kind of work. I can't speak really for the University of Vermont, although we've heard some from, Professor Miller and the others. But I agree with Senator Chittenden that this, as far as the Vermont State Colleges go, is a timely issue because of this transition. And if the changes are being made, I would think that this would be a perfect time to make the change for the governance board as well.
I think the only other thing I'll put out there is, and I don't know if I've shared this with everyone, by no means it was intended not to, but this does belong in government ops. Senator White wants this bill, and I get it. So, I think there are some things that we can do, but it is a governance question. She has mentioned wanting this bill if we were to go forward with it. I think we could convince her that we would share it, but just back to the timing piece. I just want to, again, work within reality here. Senator Perchlik.
I was just going to agree with Senator Hooker on that it's only 2 of the whole board. And aren't there students on the board already? And like they could, the same argument could be said, oh no, the students are going to cut the tuition or something. So when you just have 2 of a large board, I think you get much more of the positive. You get their input and the benefits of their input from whatever perspective they are, students, staff, faculty, financially sound alumni, whatever it is. That's what makes a stronger board. So that's why I think it's a good idea. I don't know if I want to go to Cornell and get whatever she said, 95 members on the board.
54.
If it's a good group, a couple I think can be positive in that concern about them voting for their own financial interest it doesn't concern me as much with a large board.
Senator Hooker, are 2 students on the board? Is that accurate?
It would be an increase of 2 students to 3 on the
Oh, there are
board.
none right now on the board.
There's 1 on the board.
There's 1 right now. And does that student, can he or she vote?
Let's see. 2, it just says 2 undergrad and 1 graduate would be what they are asking for, but I'm not sure. I think they do have a vote on the board. I'd have to check that out.
I think the bill as written would put 9 new trustees at UVM. Is that accurate? I believe.
An increase of 9 at UVM and an increase of 8 at the state college system.
Okay. Senator Chittenden.
I don't want to be dismissive of the larger board notion. It has come up over time that can be very useful when it comes to engaging alumni for donations and sponsorship to be able to give those titles. So I would expect both the VSC and UVM board would be open if we brought in this conversation. And similar to why Cornell has 67 of them, that's a lot of alumni that can now say they're a Cornell Board of Trustee member, which might want to name a building after themselves as they go forward. So I think a larger board for these types of institutions has merit, and I would want to engage current board leadership and administrations of these institutions to hear their thoughts on that.
I'll be honest, I'm feeling bad because I feel like I was so dismissive. And I feel like I could rewind it and have everybody come back. I would say, I didn't mean to be so dismissive, but I still do have my just concerns that with 2 weeks and Senator White also weighing in, I just do want to live in, we have a lot to do with the PROPs and a number of other bills, as we know. So I just, not saying, listen, I will never say no. It's impossible. I always feel like a chair really can, I live in the fear of Perchlik rolling me on something. So it's, we know he wants this chair. I'm going to defend it as long as I can. Hopefully to make it at least until May. Senator Hooker.
You had mentioned something about after crossover. How does that play into this? I mean,
Well, So we do have, a bill that the House sent us last year that I held on to because I knew that we would need a vehicle for possibly other things after crossover. It's their literacy bill, so it would be a strike all, and it would have to, we'd have to get everybody on board. But there is a vehicle, and I always feel like there are possibilities to do things after crossover.
Well, and I certainly understand the timing issue. I'm not dismissing your feelings.
No, but I do apologize genuinely. I just felt like I didn't mean to be so dismissive. I mean, here you are also putting your time and effort into this, and I respect that. And so if we need time, we can always find time. Senator Perchlik, were you going to add something?
I support the bill, the whole bill. I'm also supportive of, because of the time. If we can save time by narrowing it down to some part of it, I can understand, because there's other things that I want the committee to work on too. So
Really?
I understand. I'm just saying I agree with you on the timing, but I also don't want to leave it behind because of that. But So I'm open to trying to figure out a way to keep it going, as Senator Lyon said.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I did not think you were dismissive. I think you were sharing with us the reality of where we are. So I don't think you need to be apologetic about what you said.
Well, thanks. I'm glad my partner isn't here because I think you being dismissive. I hope the press is getting all this, by the way. I'm sorry. Thank you, those Senator Lyons.
So
You're welcome.
Might I take this back to the group that I've been working with to see
Yeah.
about maybe honing it down a little?
So yeah, maybe the best thing to do is you and I review the bill and kind of just think things through a little bit and see and then we could talk to others, including Senator White, just to understand a few things going forward.
Okay.
And then go from there. I mean, sadly, is a bummer about all this is you realize when you're back in the building how many quick conversations you can have at this moment instead of over text or phone calls. So, but if you want to, at the end of the day today, we could just spend 5 minutes kind of charting some kind of path forward, having conversations with Senator White and others, and looking at the calendar and just thinking about what we would have to do, and then the possibility of I feel like I've said a zillion times we have a vehicle and I don't want to promise that vehicle for
It'll be an 18-wheeler.
18, right? Exactly. So, so if it works for you, Cheryl, Senator Hooker, right after when we're done today, we can just spend 10 minutes, stay on Zoom, and we can kind of hammer out things and then go from there.
Okay.
That work? Okay. Okay. If it works, everybody, let's take 10 minutes and we'll come back and hear from Dr. Levine.